Hi guys, welcome to another Your Tiny Neighbors video. In this video we just wanted to talk about how to design your very own tiny house with little or no experience at all. When we started designing our tiny house, we definitely didn't have any experience in
none.
anything like that. So where we started was just looking at other people's tiny houses and what they did with their space.
We watched endless tiny house videos. So we watched a lot of videos, we went through a lot of blogs of just photos that people did, and we started to focus after a while on the numbers, like the dimensions of different houses that we were really intrigued about.
I'd say the first thing to do is start looking at other tiny houses and start looking at how they're set up, how that space was used, decide whether or not you want a loft, decide whether or not you want a storage loft. These are things that you want to think about. Do you want the bathroom to be in the very back of the house? Or do you want the bathroom to be almost in the middle of the house? Do you want the door to be at one end of the house, or do you want it to be in the center of the house?
And then with all of these decisions, you also have to look at what you give up with each of these things. Like if you want a storage loft, then you can't have a vaulted ceiling throughout your entire tiny house. As much of a vaulted ceiling as you can get in a tiny house. And if you have the door on the narrow width of the tiny house, then you can't put a bathroom there. There's all these little compromises. So as you begin to fall in love with things that you see in tiny houses, you also have to look at what your dream tiny houses are lacking, and if you're alright with missing out on that too.
Yeah, once you get all these ideas coming together and you have a solid idea of how you think you want it set up, a great thing to do is break out the graph paper, or what we did is we used Google Sheets and kind of just made the rectangles into squares and kind of mapped it out. We used one block as a square foot, and just kind of started mapping out, okay, this is where we want the loft to be, and this is how much space it's going to take up.
And our tiny house is currently on wheels, so as soon as we had a trailer in mind, that we had a trailer we had purchased, we went right ahead onto our Google Sheets and we made all the arrangements to all of a sudden have this concrete idea that it's an 8-foot trailer by 20 feet. So from there, we could make sure that our kitchen would fit and our bathroom was budgeted after that, and then so on. So the numbers ended up being a really big game when you're planning out the square footage of your tiny house.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's really, you're going to change this a lot. Okay, it's something that you want to start, have a good idea on, but also you need to be flexible. A great tip I could give you while you're building a tiny house is just be flexible and ready to compromise with anything, anything and everything. But you're going to change these things, and it really, you want to have the trailer. Once you get designing and planning, once you buy the trailer, now you have a set space, You're not going to know how big it's going to be until you get your trailer, or until you pick out your trailer. Once you have that set dimension, because ours is 8 by 20, once you have that, then you know exactly how much space you're working with, and then you can start deciding, I want to dedicate this much space to the kitchen, I want to dedicate this much space to the bathroom, and so on and so forth. Once you have that set guideline, it makes it a lot easier to start going through and designing the house.
Yeah, another great thing to do is in your current living situation is just to start measuring your everyday things. Like, find out how big your current closet is, how big your current kitchen is, and just start to look at the, I assume, downsizing that's going to go into moving into a much smaller tiny house. So just having those in mind also, like if you realize that you have this 6 square foot closet, maybe going down to 2 square feet is going to be a huge change, and it's something you should definitely look into, because when designing your own tiny house, you are designing your own space, and you should definitely have yourself in mind. Ethan is the taller one of the two of us, and we took his height into consideration when having our lower ceilinged kitchen and bathroom. So we made sure that he could easily stand up in that space, but as a much shorter person, that wasn't something that I had to factor in when we were blueprinting our house.
Yeah, you're really designing this space for you, so you want to take into consideration your needs and your wants. What's important to you? If you're somebody who really likes cooking and is a real foodie, then maybe you want to devote a little bit more money and space into the kitchen. You know, maybe you really love movies and you want to have a really nice living room with a big TV. So that you can watch movies all the time. It's really, you're building your own space, your ideal space, so you want to take all those things into account. Another thing while you're taking all these things into account is you want to decide what furniture you want. You want to decide what appliances you're going to need and want. Things like, do you want a washer and dryer? Do you want a standard toilet? Do you want... how big of a fridge do you want? Can you live with a mini fridge? Yeah, do you want an oven? Do you need a water heater? Do you need... I mean,
a heater.
Yeah. What kind of heater are you going to use? Are you going to use a wood stove? Are you going to use a propane heater? Are you going to use an electrical heater? These are the kind of things that you want to start asking yourself and start looking at what different appliances and what different pieces of furniture you want to buy. And then now you have those and you can see what dimensions they are and add that to your design. You say, well, the fridge takes up this much space, and then you can start putting that in. So you want to just start looking and thinking about all the things you want to fit into your tiny house and having a visual, you know, whether it be on Google Sheets or just regular grid paper, is a great way to look at it. And then once you do get your trailer, you can even tape it out. We use tape on the floor.
We had chalk in the driveway. We chalked it out. We walked through and we found out that some spaces were tight, and we had to figure out if we had space to budget out to make them wider, or if it was just one of the compromises that go into building a tiny house. Because there are a lot of compromises going into living in a tiny house, but going forward, we always found that it was still worth it, and that our compromises, we know every reason why we compromised on things. Like, if some of you watched our last video, we compromised on price to have a composting toilet that we built ourselves, and we're fine with this because it was just part of the compromises we made along the way. So every inconvenience that we might run into, we know the reasons behind it, and it's a lot better than renting somewhere where you always have this weird corner that you never planned for or such. It's just so much nicer in your own space, that you know the reason why everything is where it is, and you personally chose and accounted for it. So I think we definitely found that planning our own tiny house has been very rewarding. There are blueprints that you can buy or find online, and they're definitely great starting points. But we found that personally, with just a lot of time and compromising, we were able to do it on our own with the grid paper and compromises as we went into the building phase.
Yeah, we can't stress more, just watch every single video that you can on tiny houses. There's a lot of great videos out there, great channels, RelaxShack.com, Your Tiny House Listings, Living Alternatively. We'll put a few links in this video in the description of some great channels that you can look at. But just seeing how other people attack it is a great way to just start picking little things out, like, oh, I really like this ladder that they did, or I really like the way that they built this couch that also turns into a table, and things like that. You know, you just want to start picking little things, but also make the space your own. You know, you don't want to do a complete exact copy of somebody else, because that's a house for them. It's not a house for you. You want to look at your needs, your wants, and design the house exactly how you want it. And it's and it's important to look at the inside design. A lot of times looking at these tiny house videos, you really fall in love with the exteriors. Like, a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into the exterior with the tiny porch,
But it's really important to look at the space budgeting on the inside and if they have the criteria inside that you would like, because it's more important to love the inside of your house than how the bay windows look on the outside. That was one thing that I definitely noticed in my tiny house watching, that it was a big transition to start to focus on how I would view myself within the house instead of just seeing these cool tiny houses that are like curved roofs and everything. It just comes down to what's inside the tiny house is a great starting point also, from being a watcher to actually creating your own tiny house.
Another thing to take into consideration is windows and window placement. We didn't buy a single window in our house. They were all donated or given to us or found on the side of the road. So we didn't have any of the windows, the placement. We didn't have any designs for that. We just kind of changed that as we got them. You know, we kind of said, where can we put this window? We knew that we wanted a good amount of windows to allow as much light as possible and kind of make the space feel more open. So, I mean, that just goes back to saying it's constantly going to be changing your design. And even while you're building it, things are going to change. You know, you might be walking around in the space as things are starting to get built and say, you know what, I don't think that there's enough space in here. In the living room, I think we need to expand it a little bit more. Or I think that I'll be more comfortable in a bathroom that's a little bit bigger. Things like that. So just always be flexible and always be ready to change things. Don't fall in love with something. You know, it's good to have an idea and it's good to have a kind of a vision of your house, but just always be flexible, because things can always change. You might find out that that there's just not enough space, and you have to make compromises. Also,
as we were building, we were also told the reality of building. So since neither of us had building background, and his dad fortunately had more than enough to share with us, as we went along, we were kind of told reality that we had to kind of like comply with going forward. So just in the building process, I mean, anyone who has building experience will probably be 10 steps ahead of where we were getting started. But just the nature of things being built, we had to make compromises on that just beyond spacing going forward. But yeah, we put a lot of changes into our original blueprint that we're going to include in this video here.
Yeah. So that's about it as far as our kind of tips and suggestions for anyone out there looking to design their own tiny house and don't really know where to start. It's really just best to look. You're on the shoulder of giants, as we were. You know, there's a lot of people out there that have done the work and have designed things, so we're able to, you know, use their work and see what we like and see what we don't like, and just start doing it. I mean, you just have to get down, you know, some grid paper, start writing things down, start making the plans and adjustments, and it'll go a lot easier than you think. And especially once you start figuring out what appliances, what furniture, what you need. I mean, the biggest thing to look is your needs and wants.
Yeah,
you know,
the bare
that's
minimum
the best place
that
to
you
start.
need to be comfortable. It is your living arrangement. No matter how long you're planning to live in your tiny house, like even a weekend getaway, like you make sure you pack everything in your suitcase that you need. It's going to be the same moving into the tiny house. So for this long-term living, it's what do you need to be comfortable and happy. And if that's a bigger closet, then it's a bigger closet. If it's a bigger bathroom, then that's what it is. But it all just comes down to planning ahead and just seeing other people who made the same compromises that you're willing to go for.
Yeah. So thanks a lot for watching this video. Thanks a lot for subscribing too. We've gotten, you know, a lot of love on this channel. We're gonna keep making more videos about tiny houses and our experience in building a tiny house and living in a tiny house. We got over 100 subscribers, so that makes us really happy. And thanks a lot, and we'll catch you on the next video.
See ya!